Mental health is a problem. It's a problem in society at large and specifically in the veteran community. So I sat down with Jacob Schick, Marine veteran and CEO of One Tribe Foundation, for a very real conversation around the subject. The conversation is timely given this time of year when many consider it to be the most challenging and stressful for their mental health. Jake had a bad day at the office in 2004 when he got into a fight with an IED. The good news is he won that fight and he's still with us today. But the blast left him with TBI, PTSD, and numerous wounds that continue to challenge him every day. He fights through it though, all while doing his part in combating the epidemic of suicide. The only thing I regret about this conversation is that we didn't have time to cover everything that I wanted to. Come take a listen, and before you do anything else, like and subscribe. I want to jump right into the mental health side of things.
Yeah.
And I don't want you and I to hold anything back. Not that I have to worry about that with you. Have we made improvements since One Tribe started as 22 Kill, and since it started as an organization? Have we made improvements on mental health?
Yes. Short answer. Yes. Do we have lots of work to do? Absolutely. And
where have we made the improvements?
Openness and confronting it. Openness and asking for help. I believe we've made significant leaps and bounds as opposed to where we were in 2013. No doubt in my mind, especially amongst the various branches in our military, to include the Marine Corps. I believe that we have made drastic improvements in the mental and emotional arena. Yes.
So, with that being said, paint a picture for people who, from a military standpoint, I want to get into this, based on what we see in the civilian world as well. But paint a picture for people what it was like in the Marine Corps at one time versus what you're talking about now being open.
Okay. I mean, it's a simple picture to paint, really. Anything above the neck was off limits. Meaning, if you had a hurt knee or ankle or arm, whatever, we can address that. You can go to medical, no problem. Go see doc. Doc will get you medical. We'll get that handled. Anything going on 6 inches in between the ears is the no-go zone. We do not do that. We're gladiators, and that's showing weakness. We do not show weakness. And that is now, for the most part, you're not taking that approach. You're seeing leadership at a very high level, and majority of the branches embracing the thoughts of mental and emotional wellness. Understanding too that we were in 2 wars for 20 plus years, and it does its damage. And they're not idiots. You don't get to that level by being dumb. And they understand. I mean, how many general officers have we seen over the last 2 decades or more die by suicide? Because there's been more than one. And so it's been an epidemic that has affected every branch at every level, whether officer enlisted. And so I feel like that they've seen this, and that's trickled over to the civilian side, and more so in first responder, law enforcement officer. You're starting to see these groups be more open to it, which I think is very, very important, because they're not like us. They're not going to go do a 7-month deployment, or if you're in the Army, I mean, up to 15-month deployment, and then come back and get a year of decompression or downtime. It's day in and day out. And so I think we've done a really good job at awareness. I feel like we started the ball rolling on that.
Okay, but there is a level of truth to what you said, as far as we are reared to be gladiators. We are reared to kill. I mean, that is, at the end of the day, that is why we exist as a Department of Defense.
Correct.
Because if you're defending yourself with the intent of destroying the enemy who is attacking you. So there is some truth to the idea that we can be, if we're not careful, if we put too much weight into those problems, into, well, you just got to kind of deal with it. Mm-hmm. Or maybe I didn't really say that right, but if we become too empathetic about it, we open ourselves up for weakness. There's a school of thought there that in some way, I think there's some validity to it. The bigger issue, it seems like, is when we leave active duty. We're not equipped to compartmentalize those things anymore, deal with the things that were bothering us. But yet a lot of these suicides are happening on active duty. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's got to be a balance, right?
I mean, one would hope, because it hadn't been figured out yet.
Well, this isn't a new phenomenon.
No, it's something that's been around for, I mean, ever.
World War I, it was called
shell shock.
Shell shock.
I mean, it's something that's been around forever, and I think it's something that really where, you know, and I semi-agree with what you said, and I don't agree with it completely. And the reason being is because I think being a living example of someone who's found victory in their vulnerability while refusing to be a hostage of their pride has made me a much stronger, more stable human. By me unapologetically being me and not giving a damn what anybody else thought about it.
Okay, so we've made progress.
Yeah.
And I guess the bigger question then is, can we still be strong while being vulnerable?
100%.
Because a lot of people don't look at it that way.
Well, just because I love you, Todd, doesn't mean I'm afraid to make you bleed.
Yeah. It's kind of a violent statement. I almost feel offended by that.
Well, that's your prerogative. But that's the thing. You can be a loving, caring, empathetic, some cases sympathetic human being while still having that edge, having that gladiator approach. And I mean just what I said. Just because I love you doesn't mean I'm afraid to make you bleed. You know, hopefully it would never come to that, but it doesn't mean that I would shy away from it. And you can be both. And I think societally we've been, you know, there's all these categorical boxes society's got. And you get placed in one as an officer, and I get placed in one as a wounded enlisted guy, and you know, because then you're easily defined. It takes no work. Like, okay, well, that person goes in this box. That person goes in this box. And essentially what it comes down to is it's a lackadaisical mindset, and you don't have to take the time to actually get to know someone at the molecular level, because that takes a lot of work. I think it's something that has made us, we've regressed as a people so much, as humankind, that the boxes just become more and more and more and more. Where I feel like anything technologically related is making us regress. There's less human-to-human interaction. This is something you and I have talked about multiple times, about how, especially with our youth, that it's gotten so bad where they can't look at someone in the eyes and have a conversation. And I mean, that's a problem. You're losing that human element and that human connection. And I see it now with, you know, kids in their 20s into their 30s, and it's like, damn, like you're going to have, I mean, until this older generation completely dies off, it's not going to serve you well. You got to be able to look at someone. Computers aren't going to do it. AI is not going to be able to feel the impact of a suicide of a good friend or whatever the way you or I will.
I actually read an article on this a couple of days ago that the next step for AI is learning that emotional intelligence, and that there is belief that there's reason to believe that they can learn some of that emotional intelligence.
Some. I mean, and here's the thing. If they can, great, grand, and wonderful, in that order. Like, let robots control the world. What could possibly go wrong? They're man-made.
What could possibly go wrong? They're man-made. That is a very, very insightful comment.
Yeah, it just is like, I want to love my circle. I want to love my circle all the way. Be completely genuine in who I am to them. Be present for them, ever present. Let them know they can depend on me till my dying breath. As long as God is able to fill my lungs with His oxygen and have my mind be clear, because I choose to practice recovery and a recovery lifestyle, being clean and sober, then that's all I care about. What anyone else outside that circle thinks is none of my business.
So you obviously went through, well, you know what, before I even go there, I want to go back to the whole mental health thing. We've made progress. Here's one of the things that really bothers me, though, and I really want to get your thoughts on this. I think we do a really poor job in the veteran community allowing veterans to be painted as a victim class.
100% agree.
Because what we end up doing so often is, and we have to go out there and we have to tell people about the problems.
Yeah.
And like you said, the boxes, it's an easy way to look at the problem of mental health when you scale it down to, the military as a microcosm of the whole.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I'm not sure from the statistics that I've seen that the veteran community is any worse off from a mental standpoint, from a mental health standpoint, than the rest of society. I don't know that that's the case.
They're not.
Now, I think where I think it becomes confusion for a lot of people is we're supposed to be the mentally strong ones, and we're not. And so, the idea of the veteran community being a victim class bothers me to no end. And I think we have to do a much better job changing that perception. Because the reality is, how many people do you know in the veteran community who are incredibly successful? A lot.
A lot. Yeah. Yeah, well, I think in your assertion, it's you have a very small percentage with the victim stamp.
Mm-hmm.
In totality of the overall percentage that have the loudest megaphones. Look at the rest of society.
Mm-hmm.
Same.
Mm-hmm.
They make the loudest noise.
Yeah, that's true. It's fair. So how do we take that back?
We got to stand up and stop worrying about whose feelings we hurt. You got to stop giving a damn what other people think about you. Here's the thing. I want my sons to live a convicted life in who they are, knowing that they only need them at the end of the day, them and their relationship with the Lord. That's it. At the end of the day, that's all they really need. I need them to have the ability to sit and be present with themselves, period, and it not be uncomfortable. Because I could ask you, how many people do you know that could sit and just be and be completely present with themselves and could no kidding sit and do that?
That's a hard thing. It's a hard, because there's so many distractions now.
Yeah. That's my point, is that how far do you want to take it? We could sit here and we could talk about all these different issues and these categorical groups, and when at the end of the day, we all bleed red. Every one of us bleeds red. So we're connected by default, regardless of how many people that pisses off. I could give a damn less. We're connected by default, right? Whether you're an animal or a bipod, doesn't matter. You bleed red.
Yeah.
So when I completely agree with you when it comes to the idea of, well, it's not so much just veteran or military. This is a societal 100%. And I've been saying this for a long time. A lot of experts have been saying this for a long time. It's a human issue. Human issue.
So how do we solve it? How does this because mental health is more of a problem today than it's ever been. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, Todd, if I had the answer to how we solved it, I wouldn't be sitting there talking to you.
well, I guess you're looking for an answer. Let me see what I can do to help. No, but you know, I think the other thing is, you know, like I was driving along with my daughter this morning, and she was, I can tell she's in a little bit of a funk,
Yeah.
and it has to do with, you know, being connected to other girls at school, and you know, and she's always been a very, you know, popular kid, but she's, you know, she's in high school now, and she's trying to find her way, and you know, while I don't think that there's any mental health issues there, I'm certainly more alert and aware about it than I've ever been.
Good. Have you asked her?
No, I haven't. I haven't. You know, and it's not that I'm assuming she's fine. It's that I just, you know, I think there's also a concern if you put too many thoughts into someone's head, they start to think those thoughts that you don't want them to think. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I also think that you brought up a balance a minute ago. Mm-hmm. Well, it's like okay. Well, if I just completely avoid this potential issue altogether and not bring it up, it's never going to be thought about. You know, last time I checked, there's a God and you're not Him. And I know this, that I'll be damned if I have to live the life that the people that I know, some very well, that said, you know, nothing was ever brought up. They never mentioned anything. And then just one day, I'll be damned.
So then how do you address that?
Hey, how you doing? How's your heart? How's your mind? It's a tough time we live in. You're a teenage girl. I would rather go through boot camp 100 times over than be a teenage girl.
Yeah, amen.
I mean, it is horrible. It's awful what these kids do to these kids. Not only face to face and in groups, but you know, social media and on these platforms. It's disgusting to me. And for me, it's like, okay, I don't know whether to sit down and ask you where your anger's stemming from, or to go have a quiet, undisclosed conversation with your father. Like, I mean, where's the parenting? You know, yes, it's a lot easier to slap this iPad in front of your kid and say, hey, talk to you in 6 hours.
Yeah, I remember one night Lori and I were out, and we look over, and there are these parents. Now, in fairness to them, they looked a little disheveled. But they had 3 kids, probably all under the age of 5. Each had earphones, not just ear pods, but the whole
Like the headphones.
The headphones, and plugged in, and they're just like zombies eating while they're watching something
out in a restaurant.
Now, here's everything that went through my mind. First, I'm thinking, why on earth would you do that? And I mean, I'm judgmental as hell. I'm looking at them going, why on earth would you do that to your kids? I mean, that's a time for you guys to bond. And then the more I started judging them and throwing them down the crapper, I'm like, you know what? As disheveled as they look, maybe this is the one night a week that they allow the kids to do it so that the two of them can actually have a conversation.
Maybe. Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
No, you don't. But I can tell you, they look like hammered shit.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, look, I'm guilty of it as a dad. Like, I'm guilty of the too much screen time, and it's convenience. 100%. It comes down to convenience. You know, and if you're not willing to admit, that's why I always tell people. You've heard me say this very publicly often, is that everybody relaxes. I'm probably the most fundamentally flawed human in this room.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because all I'm doing is letting people know, like, hey, I really no shit mean it, relax. Because then I also believe that I probably am the most morally askew and scarred human here. So just relax.
You know, you and I obviously have a good long history. And there are a few moments in our history that I remember very clearly. You know, one of those was, you know, the first time we met, and you were described to me by Clint Bruce, our good friend. He said, "Yeah, Jake got into a fight with an IED and he won." And I was like, that could be the oddest way I've ever heard to describe someone who got blown up. But then when I met you, it was that, I mean, that was just your attitude. Then the second thing that I remember was when you gave a talk, and it was the most angry I'd ever seen you.
Yeah.
You were just flat out angry. And I knew I needed to say something. And to your credit, when I did, you were very appreciative. You were very welcoming of the comments, and you took them to heart. And then the next thing that pops into my mind is just this series of events was when I saw you speak to the St. Rita group. I think when I left out of there, I called multiple people and said, "This is the happiest I've ever seen Jake."
Yeah.
What happened? What was the transformation?
There's God and I'm not him. I made peace with that.
But I mean,
The transformation is an ongoing daily evolution, right? I mean, it's the, I've had to rely on a lot of help from a lot of people that are a lot smarter than I am or ever will be. And I've had to come to the realization that I'm not going to save anybody. You know, it's just, I don't have that ability. Again, there's God and I'm not him. I'm here to do the work that God's gifted me to do and blessed me to have the ability to do, and I'm going to do that to the best of my ability. There's going to be days where I get tired and I wake up and the last thing I want to do is anything that involves people. You know, because the people, especially the ones that wake up choosing to be victims as opposed to victors, will suck you dry if you let them. And then they just move on to the next host. I've been very careful about the steps that I've taken and the decisions I've made that feed myself and feed my soul and my family, not take away from it. Mm-hmm. You know, where for a long time, I did a lot of things and lived ways that just all it did was destruction. And didn't give a damn about consequences because it was, you know, I went out of my way to be numb. That's a lot more welcoming than healing.
And is that largely because of, you know, the accident and the injuries?
No, and it wasn't an accident. I mean,
well, that's true. They blew you up
was
on
very
purpose.
intentional about. But here's the thing, though. I mean, it was. Look, that was a bad day at work, right? But I've often thought about, and I still do at times, ask myself, was it harder for me or was it harder for the Marines that had to see me that way? Mm-hmm. Like, who had it worse?
Well,
you know, and then
that's a very I don't even know the word I'm looking for right now, but no, I mean it's worse for you.
Yeah, but is it? And here's the thing, quantifiably on a piece of paper, you couldn't tell me. You couldn't show me quantifiably on a piece of paper who had it worse. And that's by design, right? And
yeah.
But I feel like I've thought about these men that are far mightier and have done far more courageous things than I'll ever do that I love and I respect. And, you know, I'm still very close with lots of them, and I'm very blessed for that. And I've noticed that, you know, a lot more of them have stopped drinking. A lot more of them are wanting to be dad and husband and not, you know, far less concerned about going to the bars or keeping up with the Joneses. And, you know, and I'm grateful for that. But for me, it was a bad day at the office that evolved into so many different things that have turned into some of the hardest battles I've ever had in my life. And I've realized that I'm going to take it day by day. I'm going to really practice my healthy selfish, and I refuse to let anyone impede on that. And this time of year, as we've talked about before, it always goes up. I mean, suicidal ideation depression, hypervigilance, anxiety, blah, 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 all the way down the line. It goes up. It's holidays. It happens every year. This year's no different.
Why? Why is it just because of a holiday that's supposed to be rooted? Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
I know that it is. It's rooted in something very spiritual, something very religious. Why does it go up? Is it a guilty feeling that people have? Is it a lonely feeling? What causes it?
Yeah, it's a great question that I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm going to be able to pinpoint the answer. But I can tell you the way I look at it. I can tell you about my experiences over the past better part of a decade and working in the arenas I've worked in, and that's that most of the suicides and suicidal ideation have been orbited by three things, and it's relationships, self-medicating, and finances.
Okay.
And that's not in any particular order. Those three things always seem to be ever present in these situations. And so you think about the time of just talking about here and now. I'm not going to talk about past holidays. There's no point. I mean, let's talk about right now. We live in an abysmal economy with interest rates through the roof and inflation's through the roof, and which by default has made majority of the industrialized world live paycheck to paycheck and try and decide, okay, do I pay the water bill? Do I pay the electric bill? And that adds a lot of stress. A lot of people really struggle. And then this time of year too, it's supposed to be family centric. You find a lot of people that come from broken relationships and broken families that miss out on that aspect of it. And there's a lot of people that have suffered significant loss via suicide or terminal illness or what have you, that they just don't want. Like I was told by somebody just last week, I just wish I could go to sleep at the end of November and wake up at the beginning of January.
Really? Somebody said that to you?
Yeah. And I get that, though. I understand it, because if you allow these people to completely be human and you embrace their humanness, I mean, it shouldn't be hard to understand. And just because they come at it from a different angle than I do doesn't mean that I'm any more or less of a human or they're any more or less of a human. They're just at a place in their pain that I'm not in, and that's okay. But if I'm not willing to meet them where they are and listen with not just listening with intent, intentionally listening. I don't always know what to say, and sometimes I don't say anything at all, but usually we leave this conversation, even if it's one-sided, with them feeling better about their current environment.
Yeah, a lot of people, I would agree with that. A lot of people do. They need to be heard.
That's it. I believe at least 90-some-odd% we would have different outcomes.
So you talked about those three things: relationships, self-medication, and financial.
Yeah.
Financial is probably the most superficial aspect of all of them, even though it's real. If you don't have money to pay for things, then now you're intruding on your shelter and other things. Relationships, you only have so much control over that. But self-medication, you have control. And
Path of least resistance.
You quit drinking.
Mm-hmm.
How hard was that? And how much more clear is your thinking now?
Oh, than it was. There's no comparison. I mean, even with the traumatic brain injury and the PTSD and depression and all the shit that I have, like, it's so much clearer.
Like, is there a way to describe it? Because I know that there are a lot of people who are going to hear this and they're thinking, man, I really should quit drinking.
Yeah, I would encourage you to do that.
But how can you compare the feeling where you were versus where you are? Because I've thought about that before. I have no idea.
Yeah, so where I was before was, that, I mean, you've known me, you've known drunk Jake and clean and sober Jake and everything in between. You've gotten front row seats, right? And that either way, regardless, I suck at doing stuff in moderation. Like, it is just not a forte that I've got.
Yeah, you're either an idle or you're on full throttle.
Right, there's no in between.
Right.
Like, it's either go all the way or I'm not getting out of bed.
Okay.
Good, bad, or indifferent, it's usually a hell of a show. And whereas before, I'm trying to do this good work, but I'm doing it all the while I'm completely conflicted in who I am and who I've become and what am I doing. Just because I have the ability and gift to motivate people or get people to do things they otherwise wouldn't want to do. I mean, I was using it a lot of times for self-interest, self-gain, and there's no room in the fight for the greater good for self-interest, self-gain. It'll chew you up and spit you out. It will hit you in the mouth at some point. You will lose.
Okay, but I'm going to push back on you a little bit, and I want you to tell me where I'm wrong here. I understand self-interest and self-gain, but we do things, even if it's for the greater good, we do things for a selfish reason and a selfish feeling. In other words, Mother Teresa, all the wonderfully good things that she did, all the sacrifices she made, she got something out of it.
Mother Teresa never stood up in front of people after an act of kindness and said, "Hey, look at me."
No, you're absolutely right.
That's what I'm talking about. That's
Humility.
what I'm talking about. Okay? If you are doing things for other people in order to highlight yourself, you are a part of the problem. Period. End of story. And if it's something that you find yourself like it hits you wrong, it's probably you.
So what you're saying is, it's okay to feel good about something like that.
Yeah.
But it's the reason why you do it, not the feeling you get from it.
Yeah, no one needs you from the top of a mountain shouting about what you did that was good. Shut up. Because I'm just saying, if you're going to do something for someone that can never repay you in order to help them, period, the end.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
No, you're absolutely right, and so I think it does go back to it's okay to feel good about yourself for
Of
good
course.
that you did.
Yeah, I think that's a
but you
spiritual
got to do
thing.
it for the right
Right.
reason.
And I believe that is, I really do believe that's baked in spirituality. I believe that's, God or higher power or whatever you do or don't believe in. This is my belief. I believe that's your reward. I think that's the reward for the work of good, doing good work. And I, if you take it all, to the scientific side of it, there's very specific chemical releases that happen in the brain when these things happen. And, it's a great drug. There's no better drug. And I've done most of them. I know it for a fact. And it's something that leaves you wanting it more. To the point of, you exhaust yourself to try and do these bigger, better, stronger, faster things in order to make people's lives more worthy of living well, or them to believe it anyway. And I think that's what we're really after. When it comes to the veteran community, I think that we should be the tip of the spear just for humankind, not just society in America, but for humankind, on saying it's okay to find victory in your vulnerability while refusing to be hostage to your pride. Because you can draw strength from that. And if we lead the charge in that while still maintaining the gladiator status, I think that it will have a profound effect. Because where I'm at with it is, you're looking at these suicide rates amongst, my God, middle school age kids. And it's like, what in the frickin' actual foxtrot is going on? Where is the disconnect with these young minds? Like, I got to tell you, Todd, I was never, and I came from a pretty freaking broken home. I never thought about suicide or harming myself.
Well, I didn't either, and that's the thing that it's taken me a long time, and I've read a couple of books. I had to figure out, what am I missing here? And
what was the conclusion you came to?
The conclusion that I came to, thank you for turning that around on me. The conclusion that I came to is, I'm simply not wired that way, number one.
Yeah, I know the book you're talking about. Because I remember this conversation.
Yes. And the book is called War and the Soul.
Great book.
Edward Tick. And I'll never forget where I was when it hit me like a ton of bricks. And that's when I learned the power of empathy. Because no, I'm not wired that way. I mean, I'm going through some challenges personally that I've never gone through before. And, you know, my wife keeps looking at me. She's going like, you know, what's going to happen? Why aren't you worried? You know what? I'm not worried about it because you and I are okay. You and I are in a great place personally. We've got our health. I just don't think in terms of what a lot of people think in terms of that's an easy way out. It just doesn't even cross my mind. But I don't look down on people for thinking that way because there is I think, a chemical imbalance for some people that allows those thoughts to creep in. And so, again, using the whole aspect of empathy, I got to put myself in their place a little bit. Still doesn't mean I condone it. Still doesn't mean I think it's a good idea.
Of course, yeah.
But I understand that for some people, they're actually trying to ease the pain of others too. And it's not as selfish of an act as I thought. But it's certainly not a martyrdom, an act of martyrdom.
No, and I've had so many conversations in so many places about this topic, and obviously never condoned. Permanent solution to a temporary problem, no matter how you slice it, does way more damage than it does good. But I also see the side of some people are so desperate for peace, they're willing to do anything to get it. And
that becomes a matter of, are they desperate for peace they've never known? Or
Probably.
are they desperate for the peace that they once had?
I think, probably one or the other, both. Who knows? Everybody's got a story. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say it was one or the other. It has to be one or the other. I mean, who knows? Because I know this is between them and God. And it ends there.
You know, the thing that always had me concerned was the people like yourselves, organizations like One Tribe, you spend so much time trying to help others. That wears on you after a while. You know, I mean, you know, we were talking about, I don't know, the other day we were having a conversation about it, and you'd be carrying, at the end of a hump, you'd be carrying other people's gear, and you know, and we've all been through a situation like that where you're like, hey, come on, just get on my back, we're gonna go. Some are stronger than others, and they're able to handle that, but that wears you down after a while. As tough as we want to be, every little ounce like that we carry further than we should, than we need to,
it takes its toll.
It takes its toll.
Yeah.
And so that's always worried me, you know, and like 911 operators, that's a really good example.
Mm-hmm.
Those people, EMTs, another good example. They do great work to help others. But man, they're dealing with a lot of baggage of other people.
Yeah.
And so
with no, you know, with very little thanks or praise, by the way.
And even less upside.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how they do it. But I could say the same thing for teachers, coaches. You know, I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And I
That's true. I never really thought about it like that. But yeah, teachers and coaches, I mean, because I look at them as just, you know, a good teacher and a good coach, they've got a chance to change the world.
they're molding the future.
Yeah.
Literally.
But a 911 operator, EMT, somebody, you know, and folks that, you know, that do suicide prevention.
Alive, yeah.
You're not changing the world as much as you are maybe saving the world.
Yeah, but who's to say though, you know, which one's happening or if they're happening, or because I know this. I know that my control stops outside of my own flesh. And we're masters of BSing ourselves, thinking that, we have control of all these different things. And, even when it's under our roof, or like if it involves other human beings, your control stops outside your skin. You're just,
Yeah, there at that point it's nothing but influence. Maybe influence.
yeah. And at the end of the day, I mean, how responsible are you for something someone else chooses to do?
So when you are helping somebody who has expressed suicide ideation, I believe that's the correct term.
Suicidal ideation, yeah.
Okay. How do you distinguish between somebody who is truly suicidal and someone who is just in a bad place and needs somebody to listen? Is there a way to do that?
So it depends. I mean, there's so many different variables that come into play. And that's why we do the question, persuade, refer training, and we do all these different workshops to try and get people to understand and see that difference. But you're not always going to, right? I mean, you're just not. I mean, I've had a lot of lost conversations that I had no idea were my last conversation. Didn't have a clue. So it comes back to this whole, we're only able to do what we can do. I mean, right things, right reasons. Bad days are guaranteed. God will take care of the rest. Like, that's it. I mean, we're never going to bat 1,000. There's a God, we're not him. And when it does happen, it's not our job to figure out the why.
Yeah, I mean, Father Time is undefeated. I've said that more lately than I ever have, just because of my father's.
Yeah, I mean, you're
health,
going through a very personal thing now with, like, you're only going to lose your dad once, right? And how do you prepare for that? How do you plan for that? And that's something I've learned about, especially death, is that you can always think you're ready, and you can read the books and take the steps and whatever else. And then when it actually hits you, you're like, wasn't ready. I did all these things, wasn't ready.
I think that's just it. I mean, it's until you go through a scenario, there's no way, like you said, there's no way to be ready. And
just think about your first kid.
Yeah.
How many books did you read? Like, how, I mean, you're Captain Over Prepare. Like,
I don't know about that,
but you weren't ready?
No, because I gotta, the funny thing about that, I remember this girl I went out with, years and years ago, and I thought, I had it all figured out, how the whole parenting thing went. And we're driving along, and I said, well, when I'm a parent, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and I was all smug and proud of my answer. And I turned to her and I said, what about you? What do you think? She goes, well, I think if a man and a woman love each other well and effectively, the kid part takes care of itself. And I went, damn, that was a hell of a lot more profound in a very shorter period of time than, because I was trying. I wasn't putting
at that point in your lives. She was light years ahead of you.
Oh my God, light years ahead of me.
Light years ahead of you.
That's an understatement. I mean, I was just coming, out of boot camp, I think. So I mean, I already had a warped sense of
the tan stripe, and you like you were just you had it all. Figured out.
I had it all figured out.
We've all been there, though. I mean, look, it's I think it's really interesting. There is nothing more in life more humbling than life itself.
What is the most humbled you've ever been?
Oof. I don't even want to answer it because it continues to happen.
That you've seen somebody else.
That I've witnessed?
Well, I was giving you an out. I was letting you.
Well, no, I'm okay with talking about personal experiences. I mean, if I'm not going to sit here and be vulnerable and talk about scars, I mean, why the hell should I expect anyone else to? Right? Because that just makes me a hypocrite. And, personally, anything traumatic with my children has been very, very humbling. because you do anything to take that pain from them, and you can't. And you can't. You know, and I think that pain is a excellent teacher, and that has been more humbling to me than anything. I mean, it's just because, you know, they didn't ask to be here. They didn't raise their hand and go, "Hey, I'll join this spinning ball of chaos with all of you." They didn't have a choice. You know, even though they're God's creation, God's miracle, it is it's a rough world out there that I think still is full of love and hope and kindness and humanity, and I feel like that we gotta live the example.
So you've mentioned kindness a couple of times. Why is kindness such a big thing to you?
Well, let me preface it with this. Because I'm sure the guy that I freaking chewed out on the road the other day is probably, you know, he could watch this. And first of all, I'm not sorry. You were wrong and I was right, firstly. Secondly, I think it is because we are all fundamentally scarred, right? We all have a past and things that we probably could have done differently. And everybody's got one, right? Everybody's got one. I don't give a damn if it's the preacher up at the pulpit on Sunday. I don't care if it is the nun walking in to the hospital. Everybody's got a past. Everybody. And the one thing that we all can agree on is that trauma and tragedy sucks, and it's going to punch you in the mouth. Doesn't matter race, color, creed, religion, socioeconomic status, who you know, who you don't know, doesn't matter. It does not discriminate. You're going to get punched in the mouth by something very traumatic at some point in your life. It's the only thing that puts every human being on the same playing ground.
Is there a past that is unforgivable?
I'm not God, so I'm not making that call. Because there's things here on earth.
Because I got one.
Yeah, there's things here on earth that 100%, yeah, I would find unforgivable. Yeah, you give me one because I guarantee you it's what I'm thinking of. So you go ahead.
Anything dealing with kids?
100%. 100%.
Yeah,
You couldn't, to me, preying on someone weaker than you that cannot overpower you, outthink you, makes you a coward. Period. It makes you a coward. That is why, just like I tell Jack and J-Mo, or I tell the tribe, or whomever I'm speaking to, you wake up every day and you're fighting for good or you're fighting for evil. Your choice. And it could flip midday. It's up to you to check yourself to get back. Right? And so the whole first year I was sober, I wouldn't even say I was sober. You probably remember that, say I wasn't drinking. Because I think there's a big difference between not drinking and living a sober lifestyle. And for me, the whole first year, it was like I was walking down IED Alley and it was live as hell. Just explosion after explosion. I'm like, golly, no wonder I was freaking drunk all the time. You know, and doing the occasional line of coke and smoking the occasional blunt, and you know, I just wanted to be numb. It was easier, straight up.
Which one was harder, overcoming the injuries or overcoming the self-medication?
Overcoming the physical injuries wasn't up to me. It was up to all these brilliant doctors and nurses that went to school forever to rob from Peter and give to Paul to put me back together. Like, no matter how much I wanted to or not want to, I was going to heal physically from that. It was the mental and emotional side that was and is still most detrimental to my well-being. Like, it's not the physical stuff. Physical stuff sucks, right? I mean, the older I get, there's body parts that are, I age a lot quicker than most people. I wake up in pain, I go to bed in pain, and I've just learned to deal with it. And, that's not going to get any better with time. But I'm also grateful for said pain. I mean, it reminds me that I'm still here, still ticking.
Okay, so that actually segues very nicely into one of the things that I personally have really come around on. We were talking about, earlier personally how I changed. I mean, I've told people before I'm embarrassed how I felt about suicide until that
Yeah.
moment in time where all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm looking at this thing all wrong. Well,
I remember you use those exact words.
yeah, well, I mean, I was incredibly embarrassed, at the way that I would approach it, and just because it was just so naive. I'm looking at it through the lens of someone who's never thought about that, and who hadn't even tried to understand it.
Yeah, I mean, you were on the societal boat in the thought process, which was very limited. We never really given it a lot.
Yeah, I never really thought about it as being on the societal boat, but I
Think
understand what
about
you're
how
saying.
much the societal pressure plays into our conscious and subconscious every day.
Yeah, but now we're okay with it.
I'm
And,
not.
and when I say we're okay with it, what I mean is we accept that it's a problem now, and it's not a weakness. It's something that needs to be dealt with. It's not an indicator of being weak. That's what I mean.
Okay,
And-
yeah.
And
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
but I used to look at it like that. This is an indicator that you are a weak person if you're thinking, and not as much weak as selfish. I viewed it as something very selfish. And again, I asked you about, when you've been humbled, and I think it took me a minute to kind of remember that, but that was probably when I was most humbled, was when I realized, hey, Jackwagon, this ain't about anything you're thinking. This is about things that hurt other people, things that bother other people. Just because you don't have that problem doesn't mean they're weak. And so I kind of used to look at the idea of psychedelics as a way to cope with pain. Kind of similar. They're not exactly, parallel. But there's a lot of people I can't tell you how many other veterans I've talked to who said that smoking dope rather than the pills that the VA gave them saved their life.
Yep.
And I've had to totally come around to that, because that I did buy into the societal aspect of, well, it's a gateway drug, and it very well may be. But you know what? You're going to tell me that alcohol is not a gateway drug?
I didn't go into the military hospital a drug addict. I came out one.
That's a hard thing to hear, because I know we don't do it intentionally.
Well, of course not. Yeah. It's just a byproduct of what happened, right? Nobody was hoping that I would be a freaking drug addict, right? I mean, that wasn't the
No.
intent. But I mean, you look at and that's the thing, is it's like I feel like we've really lost sight of the live and let live. Live and let live. Stop judging. Who the fuck are you to judge? And here's the thing too. Are you willing to fight, bleed, and die for said judgment? Because if you're not, shut your damn mouth. Shut up.
Now that I agree with to an extent, to a large extent, but I mean, not everybody. Listen, the military is one. Here's how I would modify what you just said.
Okay. Tell me how you would officer it up.
Listen, you and I both know not everybody is meant to serve in uniform. There are people that we served with that were more dangerous to themselves and everybody else around them.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have been serving. But I completely agree with that statement when it comes to serving your fellow man, serving your country, serving your community. If you are not willing to do that,
And that's what I mean.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. There was a statistic I read. I can't quote the exact source, but essentially it was talking about volunteering in America. What percentage of Americans volunteer?
Oof, I couldn't even tell you. I would guess.
And by the way, that could mean service in uniform.
Okay,
That could mean coaching for the for no pay down at the at the local school.
Okay, so this is a very broad.
Yes, I'm talking volunteering their time, talent,
Okay.
time or talent, not treasure.
Yeah, well, no, I mean very few people can do that anyway.
What percentage do you think of Americans do that? It's not a trick question.
I know, but I don't. I could also. I would probably venture to guess less than 5%.
It is more than that, believe it or not. But it's
I'd be very surprised if it's in the double digits.
It is. It's 1 out of 4.
Okay.
Okay. Now, remember, that's any kind of volunteering. That's going down, to church 1 day a year. I'm talking any kind of volunteering.
See, this is why these freaking studies are so skewed, and here's why. We also know that 1 out of 4 children are molested, sexually molested. But that's also the 4 that had the strength to talk about it. Right? And so, there's so many of these.
That's fine and that's fair, but here's my point.
It's still, what was the percentage? What was the
25%, 1 out of 4.
Bullshit.
So
Bullshit. I'm calling bullshit.
Just imagine, though, if you flip that. Okay, let's just take that at face value.
Okay.
And just imagine if 3 out of every 4 people in a room were volunteering their time or talent to others in some form or fashion.
We'd live in a different world.
It'd be a totally different world.
Different world.
But we get so inwardly focused. And listen, I'm guilty of it.
I think everybody is.
When I say I'm guilty of it, I do a lot of things to volunteer, but I can always do more.
Well, yeah, but so can everybody at everything, right? Anytime you hear like, I did my best, and it's like,
did you?
Like, did you absolutely do your best? Like, did you give everything you've got to give? Because there's lots of times where I leave and someone will be like, yeah, how'd you do? And I'm like, I showed up.
Well, and you're right. That right there, just showing up is one of the very first. That's the most important step.
Yeah, there's days where, I don't want to do shit, let alone fight for the greater good. It's taken its toll. It's had an impact.
Okay, so I talked about something and then I kind of veered us off course. Go back to the psychedelic thing.
I'm 100%, listen, I believe, MDMA, psychedelics, ketamine infusion, microdosing. I believe these things, looking at the outcomes, are going to have a lot of validity.
Yeah.
And if someone says, nah, Jake, when I got to go do that ketamine infusion, I'm not saying it's the end all be all, but it saved my life at the moment. Who the hell am I to say that they're talking out of their ass? I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, because even if it's, the placebo effect where, if it just makes you think that you're better.
I don't care.
Then that's fine.
I don't care. And so anyone, of course, look, you think Big Pharma wants this to be a thing?
Mm-mm.
You think that the people that are reminding you to get your booster on top of your booster with the booster baby and then booster junior and, I'm tired of this shit. You think that the government doesn't know damn good and well, and I believe it was Chris Rock that said the treatment, money's in the treatment, not the cure.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna sit here.
That was a Chris Rock thing?
I'm pretty sure it was Chris Rock or Chris Tucker. I want to say it was Chris Rock. I could be wrong. I'm sure the World Wide Web will correct me, and that's fine. But I'm telling you, it's who the hell am I to say? You microdosing shrooms, you telling me that, man, this works better than any antidepressant that I've been given or any mood stabilizer or anti-anxiety drug. Like, who the hell am I to say when you can't because it's shrooms and it's, you're really just doing it? Like, come on. I'm not, who am I to say that?
Well, and that's the other thing. It's like we're talking about something that is a natural substance to mother.
Well, here's my thing too. Well, then how come the outcomes if it stands now, as it stands now, are kicking the shit out of the outcomes that Big Pharma produces.
Well, and so let me be negative for a minute because there's no money in it for them.
Yeah, no,
But they will.
No, there's a difference between being factual and being negative. You were factual just now. You called spade a spade.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing negative about it. That's the thing. I'm not going to put lipstick on a piece of shit and call it a model. You know,
man.
let's just call a spade now. You're not going to offend me with you saying that Big Pharma runs the world. Like, no kidding. Especially,
No, that's very true. And by the way, calling a spade. Somebody said it the other day. I had to go look it up. You know where that comes from?
Of course you went and looked it up. What? Where?
I did, because I thought it had to do with shovels.
No.
Yes. Well, I thought it had to do with shovels because a spade is also a shovel. It's very simply, I go figure. I overthought this. It has to do with cards.
Yeah.
It all goes back to cards. I was like, there's no way that it's that damn simple.
Yep.
I thought it was a shovel.
Kiss method.
Keep it, that's right. We were talking about that earlier. Keep it simple, sir.
Negative. No.
Well, okay. So this is kind of the dismount for me, as always. I like to make sure we're remembering those who made, those who went before us, those who made the ultimate sacrifice. And I always ask everybody else. So I want to take my turn at this today, and we keep this, for people who are listening, we keep this, this folded flag between us, and that's my way of making sure that we always, keep the memory of those folks alive. And for me, one of my buddies I went through my training with, Greg Wright, on December 7th, that's the anniversary of his death.
I know the anniversary.
And so I gotta mention Greg Wright. Greg was probably one of the funniest people I have ever met. Had the biggest servant leadership heart I've ever experienced, and died as an agent in the CIA. In fact, his star, he's got a star on the wall at the CIA. And go figure, he was defending his asset, keeping him alive, and that person did survive. Unfortunately, Greg caught one to the femoral artery and wasn't able to survive. But he was 32 years old, man. That's way too young. Way too young. How about you?
I've been asked this question a lot over the years, especially since the inception of Carry the Load, and I'll give you the answer that I've been giving everybody the last number of years, and it's all of them. All of them.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot.
Okay, and here's why. Because I believe that if we're blessed to draw a breath and be able to have blood coursing through our veins and be upright and talking and carry on conversations and be influences to our family or our friends or whoever that is around us, I think we need to be equally responsible as the gatekeepers of their legacies. And man, I'm a firm believer that the only way to truly honor them is to live well on a daily basis.
I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. And if we don't, that statement reminds me of that, Saving Private Ryan, at the end, and I've incorporated this in a few speeches, where Tom Hanks' character tells Matt Damon's character to earn it.
Yeah.
You've been given an opportunity here to live on, earn it. And that is one of the heaviest scenes to me, that when I watched it and remembered, or when I watched it and saw it differently that one time, I've never forgotten that. And I think it's important that we remind ourselves every day we got to earn it. We got to show up and we got to earn it.
That's
because
it.
Somebody else gave us
the opportunity.
That opportunity.
And here's the thing, there's days you're going to fall flat on your face.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
That's real.
That's okay. that makes you a human like everybody else, right? I mean, we both know people actively dying as we speak.
Yeah.
And in some cases, far greater people than we could probably ever dream of being. And I'll be damned if I'm not going to call a spade and doesn't have to do with a shovel. And call myself
Has
on
to do
my
with playing
own.
cards.
I'll call myself on my own bullshit, but I will go out of my way to live the example, and I will keep myself accountable while I'm living the example. And I will own my failures because they gave me the opportunity. And that's the least I can do.
I always enjoy talking with you, my friend.
Likewise, brother. Likewise, as officer as you are. I do too. Like,
If this resonated with you in the least, please subscribe and like, and please, please, please share it with at least one person. These are the stories that make us uniquely American. These are the stories that preserve the integrity of our nation.